horse drifted alarmingly in the betting was, Fancier in the morning continued to drift. It was late on the exchanges to lose. It was something you'd see in a Dick Francis novel, Charles Buttons.
The ground is soft. It's
heavy.
It's soft on times.
It's heavy.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to the Master's Inquiry Sunday Sermon. Yes, this is the show where we get down to it, to the nitty-gritty of the week's events and racing this weekend. And joining me, as always, to chew the fat and provide you with some laughs, gaffs, and some moderate opinion. It's John Lang and Chris Lorne Malvo. Good evening, chaps.
Good evening.
Evening. Thank Christ Scotland's over.
What, the country or the match?
Well, the air meeting, I mean, fucking Scotland. They've got the only football team in the world that does a lap of disgrace.
Do you know what I saw?
You know Kanye West. If he'd been born in Glasgow, he'd have been called No You Kanye.
Very good.
I saw a video this week. It was kind of a bit weird. A group of mountain bikers on the Balmoral estate. And this is what was unreal. And I couldn't believe this because I just don't understand how royalty works and shit like that. But
it doesn't work.
None of the cunts work, do they? That's the racket.
It's like eating at Rolf. Fair point, well made, Barbera. Yeah. I mean, so they were mountain biking, and literally, so this old chap walking down this path. It's fucking Prince Charles, King Charles on his own, just walking. Like, I just thought that's just. I didn't think I don't know.
There's a good story that one of the Queen's. I mean, John will love this because he's been a staunch royalist, but it's quite amusing. There's a good one. Queen's bodyguard. She says to the bodyguard, "No one's at Balmoral." She says, like, basically, fuck it, let's go and have a picnic. So he, rings the bell and gets the kitchen staff to make a hamper up, and just her and him go to the far edge of the Balmoral estate, just him and her, and they're having a picnic. And these American tourists just blunder over. So he starts to shit himself, thinking, fuck me, security risk. But, it's kind of, whatever, Chad and Mary from, Pigs, Arkansas or whatever. And they come in there and she said, didn't recognise her. And she said, oh, do you live around here? And the Queen says, yeah. She said, I've got a place over the hill, smirking. He goes, the amazing place. He said, do you know the Queen? And the Queen says, nah, not really. She said, have you ever met the Queen? And the Queen says, yeah, I've met her once. What she likes, says the American. The Queen says, she's horrible, apparently. So the American says, well, that's a shame. Oh, terrible, terrible. Do you mind if we take a selfie? So they take a selfie with the Queen and the bodyguard, etc. And they blunder off, not knowing that it's actually the Queen. And there's the idea is that somewhere in someone's photo collection in America, when they show the holiday snaps, he said, we met these wonderful couple out in Balmoral and there's the fucking Queen sitting there. I thought that was a nice story. At least it gives a little bit of humanity to an otherwise horrible group of people. But I like that idea. John, you're with me on this, aren't you? You like that?
It was heartwarming.
Yeah, I thought it was nice. Well, fuck you all. I thought, I thought it was a quite nice little story that somewhere these Americans are saying we met these wonderful people, Mary and fucking Dave or whatever, and there's the Queen sitting there grinning, looking at a selfie. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. What a lovely story.
It's a nice story, you fucking miserable bastards. I think it's nice. Fuck you all. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, relaxing in that method. I watched a smashing documentary last night. It was about what all ships together. It was riveting.
Oh, very good, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Anyway, that's a good start to the show, chaps. Yeah, don't you agree? No, says everybody listening. But anyway, right, on to today's subject and shit that we're going to talk about. And obviously, the racing this weekend was not really to say, is there really, John, on certain things. But one thing we will have a look at is the Toomey runner that won the 7 million quid sales race. One Look that beat a Lowther runner by 6, John, on the Billy Idol. What's going off there?
you could be looking at one of the best we've seen in a long time, I think, because that was ridiculous. I mean, that was going like to win a 3 furlongs out. And for a debutant in a trail that size, it was just off the graph, wasn't it?
Yes. I mean, so I compiled some numbers because I know you like numbers, like the Royals and things like that.
Yeah.
So a few numbers for you.
7 million to redecorate the fucking.
Yeah. People love a number, don't they? That's what they do. This was my crude workings. I want people to hear me out. So anyway, Dagoda won over 7 furlongs the same trip. An older horse that won in a time that was about 0.6 slower than one look. Right. So I did some crude weight for age analysis and decided that it's £25 weight for age at this time of year over 7, and Dagoda won off 73. So even if you say that that's just won off 73 with nothing in hand, that puts one look on a rating of 98, but it's ran it at 0.6 quicker. So the 0.6 then equates to about £9, which then equates to 107 with a big plus. I then analysed the time and the sectional, and it comes out at 98 with a big plus. So that is where we're at in terms of time and form before all time form get all over it and everybody else. It's 107 at form rating with a. I've got Cherry Blossom, John, running possibly £10 below, and I think there's a reason we can say this is because she's had 4 runs. She started off on 26th of July. She had 4 quick runs, really. That for a filly.
It's plausible because she's been busy enough, hasn't she?
Yeah, Curra Maiden, they rushed her through to running the Lowther. A lot of people, we said on the podcast, didn't we? We said we didn't think Cherry Blossom would go in the Lowther because she just won a maiden, and they might save her for some autumn races. Went for the Lowther, and I think she possibly ran a bit flat under Totori. Don't forget as well, the conditions were quite gluey and holding, and that was her first try at 7 furlongs. And although obviously she's bred to get it, it's a case of if that's another one race too many for the time being, that obviously I think she's ran flat. And if you look at the ratings, that does quite work out. If Cherry Blossom ran to sort of 91, my mate Alfie gave her 5, so that comes out roughly at, I don't know, sort of 90, 92, which is about right. Everything feels about right. So I reckon my rating is pretty solid, 107. But John, I can't remember many horses in my lifetime, including Frankel, running to 107 on debut.
It's an outrageous performance, however you look at it, to me. And double figures for the Guineas, you have to have her in, don't you?
You do, but one proviso I'm putting in for Billy Bunters, I genuinely think that Paddy Toomey has them well to do on debut. He always does. He's got an amazing record with debutants, and they've got the carrots, they've got the good feed, and these turn up on debut, and that would have been as fit as they can get it, because obviously they were racing for that kind of money. So there's nothing to come from a fitness angle. There's arguments that, well, that was 7 furlongs on pretty tacky ground, and is a mile, as a 3-year-old going to suit? Will it want further, given that one of the siblings got like a mile and 3? Is it one of them where a mile might be just? I don't know. I'm just putting. I'm not saying that's the case. The foot she showed, the sectionals were good, right? She did the last 3 furlongs over a second quicker than anything else in the race. Which the last time I saw that was Tahira. Tahira in the race before the Moyglare in her prep, I thought, geez, you are something special. Then she bolts up in the Moyglare, obviously. Chris Poole, trumpets, bolted up with my money on there as well. So what I'm trying to say is that when you record sectionals like that, which are over a second faster than anything else in the race, that means you have some serious gears, no matter what ground and what trip.
Oh yeah. Can I just make a quick excuse for my horse in that race?
Of course, yeah.
Last turning into the straight.
We're talking about Guildenstern, obviously,
Yeah.
for those that don't listen to the Friday show.
And then front rank within a furlong. Now, there's big race moves and there's big mid-race moves. That was a big mid-race move. And it was no surprise to see the horse emptied out. I don't think it was on the best part of the track either. We will be giving that one another chance.
Yes, that was the only one I was watching. I had a bet in the race, so the only one I was watching was yours, obviously, because you tipped it up on the shirt. So, and I'm thinking, like it was in a terrible position early. I thought, I don't like that where you've come from. But then, like you said, the move, he got it literally from near last.
It was about 150 yards. He went from last to nearly first.
Yes.
In a field that size. It's showed plenty of ability, but my God, you're not going to sustain that, are you?
I mean, looking at the sectionals, so basically, John, from the 4 to the 3 pole, the horse clocked the 2 quickest times at that point. Basically, for 2 furlongs, you were the best horse in the race in terms of like move.
Yeah.
And to be fair, the 2 to the 1 pole wasn't shabby at 12.2. You then just tied up literally in the last furlong. So you're right. You're 100% correct. That horse has got a lot more to come. So Guildenstern, watch out for that one. As that was John's bet.
I'll never understand why jockeys sit last and then aim to get to the front at the 2 furlong pole.
Yeah.
It's absolute rank insanity.
Well,
if you're going to sit last, and get there 20 yards out.
If we're going to talk about jockeys, and I think this does need mentioning, I've noticed, and I thought, is this just pocket speak? Because we all guilty of it, aren't we? We all, slowly run races. Sometimes I think I'm imagining it, and I think, maybe it's just me that's pocket talking. I always seem to be on one sat 5th or 6th, and they crawl, and it's like, why me? And I'm midway through the race, I'm going, why always me? I'm not pocket talking because I did the stats on this, and astonishingly, we're already at the same number, and we're only in September as last year.
Yeah.
Right. For races run at 110% finishing speed or slower or quicker, which means slowly run races. We're only 8 winners, 8 races off that finishing percentage.
We're turning into France.
Yeah. And we said, John, we had a conversation the other day, didn't we? We said about like staying races that it seems the tactic now where it's like, right, go hard for the first 2 furlongs and they get some revs up and you think, well, this is a nice pace. And then they slam the brakes on. Like it's just, and they're going down to 31 mile an hour. And the problem is, none of our jockeys, I'll be honest, I think we're in a bad time period for jockeys. This is not a golden age for very good jockeys. And I think a lot of our jockeys are just then, if they sat 3rd or 4th, they'll continue to sit 3rd or 4th or 6th. They won't use their initiative. They won't think, right, I need to probably move up a couple of places. You don't have to take it up, but you just sit on the shoulder at front runner, maybe. Just move up and sit on the shoulder and then park your energy. But a lot of our jockeys just seem to just accept positions 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th in the run, and then they only make the move coming for home when, of course, the kilts nicked it on the front.
You can't think of anything worse than turning into France, can you, really? I mean, eating stinky cheese, shrugging a lot, and surrendering.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah, surrendering. Yeah, that's one thing that springs to mind about France. In terms of solo races, this is why I'm criticised. This is a message to all our jockeys. You're all bin men, because apart from the ones on the front end that are getting the runs of the races and many staying contests on the all-weather, you're all fucked. You can't ride. You can't even hit them too many times these days or you get banned. So work it out for yourselves. Where do you want to sit in a race? If you feel they're going slow and they're stacking...
themselves, you might as well be telling them to dress themselves.
I mean, I don't know if it's pressure from trainers. I don't know if it's preconceived ideas from trainers telling them how to ride.
They're all fucking idiots, aren't they?
But it's just the standard is so poor. It is honestly the standard of jockeyship in this day and age is, and we've lived through great eras. A lot of us old uns have lived through, Scobie Breesley, Eddie Hyde,
Fred Archer.
Fred Archer, Piggott, Edery, Cawthon, Carson. Then we had Dettori, and obviously Dettori's coming to the end of his. And I'll be honest, I don't think Dettori were as good as the Golden Age. I'll be honest. I think some of these lads back in the day were just different class. And
Dettori stands out now because of what he's up against.
Even like Godolphin jockeys like Buick and Doyle, they're very questionable at times. And it's as if like the whole of Newmarket is preconceived into you cannot make the running on a horse. You have to sit third or fourth. No matter what the pace, no matter what anything else, you teach the horse to settle and you get it sat third or fourth. And Simcock's argument, it'll be all about longevity. For me, if I was an owner paying the bills, it would be about winning races. And if that meant on one occasion, you don't have to do it every time, that we take it up and you say to your jockey, look, there's no pace, go on. If you don't sit second or third, and I see so many jockeys, John, in this modern day that waste the brake. They'll brake well, but because they've been told, so they'll waste the length start, they get out of the traps, and then just sit fourth or fifth.
It's incredibly frustrating when you're back from that.
It's just because they've been told to take a lead.
Yeah.
And it's like, what on earth?
It's funny you should mention Newmarket, really, because probably the greatest trainer ever to grace Newmarket, arguably, Henry Cecil, his best ever spell, you would have said, was when Steve Cawthon was riding for him, and he had more horses making the running than at any point in his career.
Yeah, exactly. That is a very good point. Yeah, and to be honest, Cecil just let Cawthon do what he did. Cecil was Jeff Bezos kilt, weren't he? In terms of comparison, kilts making all round Beverley and shit tit and Hamilton and shit tits like that, and Cecil was making all in fucking Ledgers, Derbies, you name it. And that was it. That was probably. I mean, maybe there were too many Simcocks around then, John.
Very possibly. I mean, but even courses like Yarmouth, where you wouldn't necessarily say it favours a hold-up, Cecil and Cawthon were having 4-timers and things, and that tells you how good they were.
Do you know what? I don't think they get that now. Do you know why? Because I think the overwatered slop, right, that you get now, I think the good to firm back then, well, it'd be like 10 on stick.
Yeah.
They didn't stop. They just didn't stop. Cecil could get them fit, and they just wouldn't stop. And a lot of Cecil's breeding were probably sort of USA, that kind of sort of sire and dam sire lines. All of a sudden, then you got front runners that could go on it, and nothing else could catch him. But nowadays, on this slop, and we'll come on to this now, Stuart Williams put a post up in frustration the other week, and he stated on Twitter that it was the worst time he'd ever known in racing for bad ground, turning up to tracks, expecting good to firm, and you end up with absolute shit and slower. And it's always one way. It's always fucking slower, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
It's never other way. It's never, oh, well, I'm turning.
Oh, fucking hell, it's faster. No, never.
No, it's always other way around. And it's amazing how many times, and Tony Calvin's made a point on this, when he says, you've only got to have 6 millimeters of rain at tracks now, like, during the morning or something. And literally the ground is just, it's gone. It's sand down where they're running across a track from stand side to centre track, and it's all bollocks. I've no idea why we've gone like this. The incompetence is shocking. I think these are the worst set of clerks group wise I think I've ever seen as well. So with jockeys and clerks, very, very poor, John.
Oh, yeah.
And just for another moan, the betting exchange in running for me anyways, and all right, this comes after a terrible day I had yesterday, which I'll come on to in a minute. But the exchange in running for me, I think, is falling off a cliff. I'm on about just standard bets. Like, I'll give you an example. You could have a 1.5 mile race on the flat. So we're not talking 5 furlongs, anything like that. Nothing's happening 2 furlongs, but I might happen to like the position of one of mine that I liked pre-play. And let's say that horse, it's getting a nice trip. So let's say the Betfair SP is 3.5. Let's say it's trading at 3-1 at that moment. So I think, right, I'll stick in 2.92 because I'll not get matched at 3.1. So I'll stick 300 quid in at 292. It sits there like a big fat lump of shit. And it ends up being 2.8 and 2.7. And I'll get like 60 quid of it done. That's why I think it's harder than ever, because I have less in running bets, because the in running bet itself has to have a lot more value than the actual chance, because I know I've got to take lesser odds. I can't take, I'll just sit there. If I had tried ask for top market price for 300 quid or 200 quid, and I'm not talking £1,000 anymore, or like we used to get on £2,000, whatever. I'm talking like a couple £100 on a fav. It will sit there. I guarantee you it sits there. It's getting a bit all despondent, but then if they're kicking everyone else off due to affordability checks and everybody else, then who you're betting against? It's like going back to the early days of Flutter, where it was just one man and his dog before it got exciting. So I don't know how you find it in running. Are you all right? You just try and pinch a bit off, back to late.
Yeah, that's what I did. It was easy, really.
It's like I'm on about like an in-running position. I'm not on about trying to. I'm not playing too hard because I can't beat the drones. I can't beat the later players that are seeing the action before me. Yeah. I'm talking about after a couple of furlongs.
This is it, yeah.
Because I always think in a staying race or a 10, 12 furlong race, if they're going 35 mile an hour early, you're sat 4th or 5th. I'd rather take 2-1 than 5-2, because it's like they might be going 30 and you sat 7th. Yeah. And then you might as well just fucking chuck it in ooze and set it on fire like Arthur Brown, it is just that. So the fact I can't even get on when I ask for a bet even shorter than what the market's showing at that point, it just shows you where the market is. It's dire. So what do listeners think to that? Be interesting to hear your feedback on Twitter regarding the exchange and in running betting, if any of you do it. Obviously, we all have to tailor our stakes to what's there. I'm not expecting to win thousands anymore. A few £100 here and there won't go amiss. But let us know your thoughts on the exchange and how it's going. Maybe we'll forward them onto Betfair, some of your comments. What's going off? Are they killing the exchange even? Is that the aim? To kill it? To kill it dead? We'll come on to
most things dead, don't they?
Well, but yeah, most people in this game do. It's an interesting path, and we'll come on to that later in the show. Chris, I'm bringing you back in.
Yeah.
Question. Drinking match. Who's still standing? This is for John, right, as well. Right. So Chris and John, question. Drinking match.
Yeah.
Oliver Reed, George Best, or Gaza at the prime?
Oliver Reed. Oh, dear.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Oliver Reed, definitely.
2-11.
That's been on my mind all day. I picked 3 out that could, like, well, I know, but Gaza was saying he was going through like 2 boxes.
He killed Gaza.
Yeah, Oliver Reed took alcoholism to a different place, didn't he? He was different gravy when it comes to fucking drinking.
Gaza was a lager lout.
Yeah,
Oliver Reed would just destroy him.
No, but Gaza did talk about his dark times. He'd have 2 bottles of vodka in a day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He'd have that for breakfast, Oliver Reed, wouldn't he? Yeah, that just get him going. That just sets the fire going.
Yeah. So Oliver Reed is the champion. Right,
yeah. I'll do that.
That bit's just been on my mind all day. Right, so far we've looked at Toomies, we've done slowly run races and idiot jockeys, we've done Clarks and their going reports, we've done about the exchange, about could it be falling off a cliff, which might be stating the obvious. So now we come on to the slagging off bit of the show. Lots of slagging, we love slagging offs. One thing before we go on to affordability and stuff like that is an advert today I saw from BetMGM, their latest TV advert for sports betting. It was on the half-time show of the Arsenal-Tottenham game. So this is big league. We're not talking 10 p.m. with Anton Deck slots. You know, we're talking prime time, Arsenal, Tottenham. And their slogan is, get ready for a golden era in sports betting. We're new to the UK. They take bets on horses. So this is what was funny. So today on Twitter, I noticed a post some of our followers had retweeted, and it said a fellow had opened an account with BetMGM, and he wanted to withdraw his 1,900 quid winnings, and they said, no, due to UK regulation, we're going to have to do some checks with you. Yeah. Well, it isn't UK regulation. There is no UK regulation at the moment because it's under consultation in a white paper. And secondly, the Gambling Commission's rules and regulations clearly states that affordability checks and other checks are not to be used on consumers wishing to withdraw their winnings. That is fact. So why on earth is this being allowed? It is bonkers. The fellow wants to withdraw his 1960. Now, if it was my advice to the fella, Chris, I would have said, do not supply any documents. Don't supply one. Not anything. And I would issue them with a court letter giving them 7 days to pay. Otherwise, it's going to a small claims court. And I'd leave it at that. And watch the squirm.
I think so, because it is law, and they're just using they're making it up, aren't they? That's the thing. I mean, it's just a reason not to pay. So I think if people did that, it'd only take a couple, and they would stop that nonsense. But I think people just want their money, so they're happy to acquiesce, aren't they, and send whatever documents are required. But this is how they get away with it, because in isolation, people just want to get paid. They don't think of the bigger picture, do they?
Well, I'll give you the bigger picture. A recent Sky Bet case that was ruled on by IBAS, which is the sports regulatory body for deciding payments to punters and protecting punters and bookmakers as well, in light of con-man procedures, etc., decided to rule in favour of Sky Bet over collusion after a punter had produced affordability documents that basically had showed that his mate had sent him £500. Or in amount, that might be wrong, the amount, but to place the bet, IBAS ruled in favour of the bookmaker that it was collusion.
Yeah, I mean that sort of speaks to the atmosphere that is prevalent in society now. Gambling is the new tobacco, isn't it? So the courts are going to, and listen, the people that rule on these things aren't experts either, are they? Let's face it. So they're going to.
Well, you think IBAS were? IBAS are the governing body. They should understand betting. What's the difference? Right, I'll give you an example, Chris. Me and you are in a pub, yeah? And we're having a few beers, few sherbets, and you say to me, shit, I forgot to put this bet on. Lee, runs at 440. Can you get me on? Yeah, Chris, I can. Yeah. Right. So you send me 100 quid. I put the bet on. Said book comes back to me after that and said, we want bank statements. I send the bank statements in good faith, and it said, no, I see you've received £100 from Lorne Malvo. Yeah. That's collusion.
Yeah, it is. It happens all the time, though, doesn't it? And that's the problem. But previously, who gives a shit? But in the current climate, these sort of things are going to be picked up on. This is why the black market will flourish. No doubt at all. All these fools in government that think they're going to reduce sort of social harm as a result of gambling, and we know that's massively inflated. They're going to pay the price, and mainstream bookmakers will pay the price, and eventually they'll look to unwind it all, and by then I fear it will be too late.
I mean, this should go to the very top of government, really. I mean, Rishi Sunak should be all over this, but as we've seen in the last few months, he's the worst person at controlling a party since Michael Barrymore.
Well, let's hope he ain't got a swimming pool.
He has, actually. There's a lot of show about it, isn't there, where it comes.
But the thing is, I mean, Rishi Sunak's constituency is, in fact, Richmond, which is obviously a racing area. This is bizarre. To be honest, though, you look at the level of competence amongst government, and we saw that in the debate the other week, the parliamentary committee debate the other week. The only one with any credence was the Labour MP that seemed, I forget his name, he was the one that understood it all and basically come up with the right questions. Everyone else sat round as if they didn't have a clue what gambling was.
Well,
But they're
to
being
know
advised,
family,
they're being advised by idiots, aren't they? That's the problem. And yes, you can blame the MPs, quite rightly so. They should know their subject, but they are relying on advice given, and the advice is universally wrong, and that's the problem. Attacking the narrative, no one's saying actually the information you'll be given is wrong. It's fundamentally wrong because MPs just rely on their advisors. It's the odd MP that might understand that the sport or betting for what it is a rarity. Most of them just rely on advice, and the advice they're getting is wrong, and that's the problem. That is the fundamental problem with it all.
well-to-do families now, instead of sending their problem children to be teachers or priests, to sending them to be in bloody Westminster. So we've got a likely gaggle of potential child abusers, lunatics, and people
candidates,
who had toe and toe and get a job handed to them in the city. And that's what we've got governing us.
Indeed. So that brings us on then to the regulatory bodies that are regulating the sport currently, and I will include the Gambling Commission because, of course, regulating the sport because they're allowing.
Andrew Rhodes, he's Gambling Commission, isn't he?
Yes.
He's like one of them corrupt televangelists at Colombo, whatever, as a baddie.
I can't believe Colombo's got brought up.
Tammy back. They were the first, weren't they? They sort of, praise the Lord television they set up, which someone kindly called Pass the Loot is what PLC ended up in jail, didn't they? I think
God's fucking wonderful. He made the earth in 7 days, but he just shit with handling money.
Christ going well, send more money.
Yeah, totally. And I think when his wife died, when he came out of prison, he ended up selling sort of COVID kits for the rapture, which was going to happen when COVID happened. And he's still selling these on TV, I think, in some parts of America.
What a twat!
Got to admire him, though. I mean, he's a grafter, isn't he? Fucking hell, no shame with it.
So coming to twats, then there's a line of them coming up, which will please John. I'll come on to further twats down the line, but we're going to start with the Gambling Commission because this was bizarre in life, really, where you sat there just doing your form, nothing interesting ever happens in racing other than somebody makes a cunt of themselves, and all of a sudden, Andrew John Rhodes comes out and publishes an open letter to the Racing Post with outrage that the Racing Post wouldn't publish his letter on affordability checks, and basically he accused the Racing Post of running imbalanced stories about all the consultation done by the Gambling Commission. He was annoyed that he was frequently trying to seek a right of reply, but the Racing Post refused.
These people love shit like this, right?
Yeah.
Talk backwards and forwards with fucking open letters, right?
Oh yeah.
Now what racing needs to do is to get these pricks in front of a television camera, dismantle their ridiculous arguments piece by piece for the benefit of everybody, and show them up for what they are. This can just run and run. They
won't do it because they know they're outmatched, like heavily outmatched and outgunned. So this is the Racing Post response, which was, to me, outstanding. Well done, Thomas Kerr, for this response. The Racing Post refused to publish the letter from Rhodes because he is doing what he accuses everyone else of, which is using dodgy statistics as fact. His letter also included nothing of the concerns of regular bettors, with him dismissing the concerns of these bettors as groundless, would you believe it or not? Well, Andrew John Rhodes, I'll give you fucking groundless. So I've done this all my life, and I've been asked 3 times for affordability checks when I'm a full-time player. You're the same person that these affordability checks are only consultation progress. You are refusing to acknowledge that affordability checks have been in and have been in for years and are losing thousands of people their betting accounts. Right? This is just shocking behaviour from Andrew Rhodes. That he's just completely ignoring what is going off in real life. And he keeps repeating these statistics, which the Racing Post have rightly refused to print because they're just simply very, very poor statistics. And the Racing Post survey bears this out. Andrew Rhodes disputes that just 3% of accounts will come under advanced affordability checks, as in account. So 9,000 people in a Racing Post survey 16.6% had been checked, right? And had been asked for documentation. That it's lies, and they are getting away with lies. I'm going to ask you, Chris and John. Now, I'll ask you a question. What are frictionless checks? We don't even know what frictionless checks are. And secondly, can you tell me what gambling harm is?
No, because, and I don't think anybody can, because what they're doing is conflating people's experiences who've had a number of different addictions or different life events, and attributing all their ills to gambling. Everything, you may have had a sort of seismic life event which caused you to, take drugs, do silly things, gamble. But gambling is becoming the solely attributed to that person's demise, and that's the problem. Everything is now down to gambling, whereas in reality, as I think we've heard from Abby and others, there are a range of issues that cause people to engage in destructive behaviour. But the problem is people are happy to rely on oral testimony with no data supporting it, other than that which the person themselves says, well, gambling caused this. Whereas in fact, it could be something completely different. It could be other kinds of addiction, whatever. But that's the problem. Everything is being loaded onto gambling.
Indeed.
The money these days is all into prevention, whatever aspect of life you're looking at. It's all about curing you before you even fall ill, Whereas if you go back a few years, like to when we were at school, for example, these days, sex education, you get the whole gamut, don't you? Trans, cis, whatever, all this sort of thing. When we were at school, the total sex education was don't be in the same room when you're on as a caretaker.
It's by generation, I think. I think different generations get different education. And I think we've seen that over time. I'm sure there's parents that listen to this show now and say, my child's come home rather strange from school today after some strange chat at school. Society changes through time. But at the moment, we are favouring the victim, Chris. This is right, isn't it? It's all about victimhood.
Yeah, it totally is. I mean, ultimately, the victim is fetishized now. We're led to believe that we're no longer responsible for our own actions, right? So there has to be a cause which over which we have no agency, right? So whatever happens in your life, it's someone else's fault. But worse than that they're not even requiring people to to provide any evidence to support that view. All you do is you have to say, I think it's down to drugs, gambling, whatever, and that's the problem. And they're just relying on people's oral testimony. The reality is, life is much more nuanced, much more complex than that, and often there are a range of issues. It may well be that many of these people aren't actually addicted to gambling, but that's the last thing that they did, which caused total collapse, because money, you can knock your life out in an afternoon gambling, whereas smoking or drugs, it takes many years. That's the problem. And it's kind of almost recency bias, isn't it? The last thing you did, that caused it, whereas in fact the cause may have been many years before that, but no one wants to hear about that because that's complicated.
For the last 2 years we've banged on as a podcast about this, and it's been very disappointing. It took a long time to gather pace that, look, this is not, you need to support this because it's not singular. They'll come for you eventually, and that's what they're going to do. And I read recently, and I couldn't believe this, that it said the data of one person by the bookmakers that they're collecting are very sensitive financial data that some mortgage companies won't get access to, right? Can be worth up to £400 per person for resale. Now that in itself, now imagine that. You've got 1 million customers. That's serious cash.
Yeah,
that
absolutely is. And it's about selling data, isn't it? Data is the new gold. That's how it's operating in other industries. But as I said a few weeks ago, you look at what the Gambling Commission's sort of job vacancies are. It's all about gambling harm. The job descriptions themselves are open to people who can evidence and from their own experiences having suffered gambling harm. They're not looking to recruit anybody that can say anything positive about betting. That's the problem. So they're starting from, they've already decided the answer, and now they're sort of engineering the question to give them the answer they want.
We're in a time where I've been called a nutter for a long time now, like on various sort of like how I view life and everything else. It's my personal views, and I accept it's not everyone's views. But listen, if this isn't Ben, I'll pack the game in. We're in a game where we know it's the horse racing game is bent anyway. We know this is bent. We know the books are on board with this because we remember what happened last time when they were squealing about the FOBT limits being quashed in the shops, and they said it would close many shops and it would cause harm to many families and they'd lose their jobs. Do you remember that, John?
So.
Yeah. Why aren't they squealing on this? I'll tell you why. Because they're making a fortune from this. And that's why they want it in shops. Because the same thing, they want you to go into a shop now and bet with a bank statement and your pay slips and your passport, everything, to sell that data on. They're absolute varmints. And to be honest, the Gambling Commission have a lot to answer for, like Chris says, because how is it, Chris, that the leader of the Gambling Commission, they're all connected to the Swansea University, which is basically the gambling arm people. The lived experience panel are all former either gambling addicts or people that have suffered gambling harm. There's no one on the panel that has a lived experience as a punter and said, well, no. Look at the social aspects of it. It's fantastic. It creates friendships, lifelong friendships. And why is that not even mentioned? Forget betting. How many friendships have been forged through gambling for a lifetime? Memories made.
You've nailed it. Yeah, you've nailed it. But people with a background in social sciences, etc. They are not taught to look at the positive aspects of any element of society. They work from the idea that it's broken, let's fix it. So they come into these jobs in the public sector with a kind of a righteous zeal to sort of right society's wrongs, because there's no, as John said, there's no money in saying everything's all right, leave it as it is. That's the problem. Politicians always talk about improving for the future. The politician will always talk about the future. They'll never talk about fixing problems in the here and now, because that they know that there's very little they can do. But the problem is these people only derive funding by saying, here's a problem and we can fix it. That's it. Their whole raison d'etre is about saying things are terrible, but we've got the answer. Give us some money to do it. There's no dough in saying it's generally fine, few tweaks here and there, but overall it's working. There's no money in that.
The biggest changes that come with politicians, Chris, are both before and after elections.
Yeah.
Before elections, it's all about how they're going to improve things for you. After an election, they're going to improve you.
I think that's very, it is about, this is an exercise, without sounding too Bob Lazar, this is an exercise in social engineering, isn't it? It's about changing behaviours. They're not really interested in making it safer for people to do what they want to do. They're actually looking to modify behaviour, so to make betting something that you do not want to do under any circumstances because it's too difficult. That's the problem. This is an exercise in social engineering, whether they acknowledge it or not. And as Lee says, they'll come for something else. We don't think on a basis of your carbon footprint you should take more than 2 holidays a year, so we're going to make it really fucking difficult for you to book plane tickets going forward, unless you can unless you're a leader of the free world or got your own private jet, in which case you can do what you like. That's where we're at. It's social engineering, under the guise of, we're making it safer for you. No, they're not. They're looking to change behavior.
Yes, the word safety comes up a lot, and obviously that comes up now in gambling, and sadly with a clueless BHA, which we'll come on to in a minute. But before that, I want to comment about the GCF, Gamblers Consumer Forum. This is in a time where Tories are as popular as seal clubbing, but Council Woodman, remember, doubled his majority when he won. He did the business, Jonas, right? And so he did a very... He took his exactly. He knew what he was doing. People love dogs, and big, daft, stupid ones as well. So this open letter to another open letter. This was basically to Stuart Andrew, MP at the DCMS, and I think this was a very good letter indeed. I was impressed by this because Andrew Woodman mentioned the regulator's code about the commission and the Nolan principles of a public body on public life, right? So get ready for this, chaps, yeah? So this is the Nolan principles of which a public body like the Gambling Commission should adhere to. Number 1, selflessness. Holders of public office should act solely in terms of the public interest. Cough. You could apply that to any MP, to be fair. Integrity. Holders of public office must avoid placing themselves under any obligation to people or organisations that might try inappropriately to influence them in their work. They should not act or take decisions in order to gain financial or other material benefits for themselves, their family, or their friends. They must declare and resolve any interests and relationships. Cough. This applies to Westminster, really, right? Number 3, objectivity. Holders of public office must act and take decisions impartially, fairly, and on merit, using the best evidence and without discrimination or bias. Number 4, accountability. Holders of public office are accountable to the public for their decisions and actions and must submit themselves to the scrutiny necessary to ensure this. 5, openness. Holders of public office should act and take decisions in an open and transparent manner. Information should not be withheld from the public unless there are clear and lawful reasons for doing so, right? So we're getting there. 6, honesty. Holders of public office should be truthful, John. And finally, leadership. Holders of public office should exhibit these principles in their own behaviour and treat others with respect. They should actively promote and robustly support the principles and challenge poor behaviour wherever it occurs. Right, I'm sorry, but the Gambling Commission breaks. We can talk about politicians till the cows come home, but the Gambling Commission breaks every single one of those rules, and that's a fact. Right,
they are structurally set up to break those rules. It's not just the individuals concerned that are acting in bad faith. The whole structure and the whole agenda runs contrary to those principles. That's the problem. It's systemic, isn't it?
Yeah. And what he goes on to say in his letter to Stuart Andrew, so these are the points, and these are superb, really are superb. The open letter is, in our view, unprecedented and appears to place the Commission in contravention of both the regulator's code and the Nolan principles on public life. The Commission's claim to be running a genuine consultation is undermined by its attempt to suppress views that run counter to its own, and possibly to justify its marginalisation of around 2,000 responses already received from genuine punters in response to the consultation. They're ignoring it all. They're ignoring the lot of it. The Commission takes exception with what it describes as a blatant lack of balance in a newspaper. This may or may not be the case, but it raises a question with regard to why the Commission has not been similarly exercised in relation to clearly unbalanced reporting on the subject of betting over a long period of time by national newspapers, such as The Guardian, for example. Good old Rob David. What a cunt. The open letter thus appears to be yet another example of selective intervention in a long series of selective interventions that betrays the regulator's claims to impartiality. Again, the Nolan principles on public life. The Commission also complain of being denied a right of reply by the Racing Post, and then go on to prohibit comments, John, on their Twitter posts.
Yes, I noticed that yesterday.
Yeah.
That's how keen they are on consultation.
So they don't want it, do they? They do not want it. No. They don't want, because they know if they up their posts, they know 90% to 95% of the responses will be absolutely slamming in the lamb in terms of like how incompetent they are, how stupid they are. In fact, I invite any member of the Gambling Commission, any of the board members, sit down in a debate with me on my own, not with a lynching mob. You can debate it with me on a pod. Do it. Get it out to the public. All out what you're trying to achieve and do. But you won't. And do you know why you won't? Because you will get absolutely rinsed. Because your points are not valid and they are certainly not accurate. And you're using statistics that are false. And you're attacking other people in the industry for your false statistics. And this must not be allowed to continue. So bring in the BHA then. Here come the toothless BHA. The attack dog, Greg Swift, John, former press secretary to Liz Truss.
That absolutely disgust me. The fact that they can bring that ridiculous questionnaire out 2 years after it was due and think that's a way to fight this now is absolutely pathetic.
Well,
There shouldn't be anywhere near running this sport.
Let me hang Greg Swift out to dry here. The former comms to high-end ministerial positions in Downing Street, right? So I'm pretty certain he got the role at the BHA in terms of contacts within Parliament. Where are they, Greg Swift? How's this going? Are you doing well? Have you got Parliament on side? If you've got Parliament on side, why the fucking hell have you come up with a survey this late in the day? The ship's about to fall off the Niagara Falls, Greg. And you've come up with the survey. Everyone's done the surveys. Everyone's done this. Everyone's done the what do you think to this? What difference has it made? You've done nothing. In fact, I'll prove it that you've done nothing because in September 2022, there was an article in the Racing Post and you were interviewed and you said one of your major remits is affordability checks and the challenge it brings to racing. Well, what have you done? You've done fuck all. And do you know why? Because you've concentrated on the levy and you've concentrated on getting a bigger slice of fuck all on the levy, haven't you? Haven't you, Greg? Yes. And I know some of you lot listen to this. So listen to this and listen to it real. You've fucked up because you've allied yourself to Big Corp. Big Corp's led you down an alleyway and now you are in your speedos. The tide is going out. Thousands of people have lost their accounts to affordability checks. You've done absolutely nothing. It was in your remit to maybe do something before this and challenge the out-of-control Gambling Commission on their absolutely false statistics on why racing is bad or why betting is bad or, this, that and the other. Yeah. But what have you done? I'll tell you what you've done. You've appointed a chairman in Joe Suarez Smith that basically is a slot invested entity. He's got investments in slot companies. Come on. We can see you. We know what's going off. The problem is you're guiding this sport into the absolute dregs that it's ever been. And trust me on this. I said this 3 years ago, not 2. 3 years ago, I was doing articles on this and saying they're coming for racing. They're coming for betting, right? And it was ignored. It was completely ignored. Barely anyone views. No one murmured, right? Mark my words, right? If you don't halt this and come out majorly in a major way protesting against the Gambling Commission to the government and saying they are out of control and out of kilter and supporting punters of this sport, we're fucked. We're all fucked. But you don't care. Why, Greg Swift and Julie Harrington and Joe Suarez Smith? Because you'll fucking move on and you'll go into some other comfy role somewhere else. Wankers.
Excellent.
Anything to add?
No, that was perfect.
No, that is perfect, and you're absolutely right because they have no skin in the game and they are kind of professional administrators. You're right. Once these regulations are imposed, they'll move on to something else because they have no long-term investment in what they're doing. They'll move on to a completely different industry. Their CV will look, will be polished up. I led the Gambling Commission and, through a period of unprecedented change, all the buzzwords, etc.
I don't give the time of day to any of these people.
The laughable thing, as well, it's about a month since Harrington went public and said, as far as she was aware, everybody thought they were doing a good job. Well, anybody that follows racing, the number of people that think they're doing a good job would be about on a par with the people
that's it, John. You've
attending the Black Book signing.
You've nailed it. They don't follow racing, and they exist. Let's be honest. They exist in their own echo chamber, as we do. right? So we come from a position, you know, that people should do what they want to do. Gambling is generally safe if you're responsible and not an idiot, you know. So we are surrounded by people who go, yeah, you're right. So you know, we're imbued with the kind of righteousness that they have, because they operate in their own echo chamber where every message they have is echoed back to them. You're right, gambling's a terrible thing. The answer is always in the middle. Yes, there needs to be more to be done to sort of, you know, to help people who are genuinely addicted to gambling. And I've got absolutely no problem with money going to beef those charities up. But the idea that everybody is at risk is nonsense. But, you know, they exist in an echo chamber. And of course, Harrington is surprised because she doesn't get out and about. No one in there follows racing. You know, they sit in an office and they repeat the same messages, and it's human nature. If you know, ultimately it's self-fulfilling prophecy. If you keep telling a dog they're bad, the dog will act bad. That's the problem, you know, and the fact that she's gone out and is really surprised, you know, is a savage indictment of her lack of competence, you know. But she's a civil servant, but, you know, all right, she's not a civil servant as in the sense that she's got a career. She's had a career in the commercial sector, but it's always in an administrative role. She's never made money. She's never been responsible for the bottom line. She is measured by very, very soft measures. You know, there's no hard data. You could not put these people in charge of any kind of company or corporation. They would go skin. And look at the idiots that run, you know, Bud Light, putting Dylan Mulvaney as, you know, that they are learning that people are just not interested, and they're surprised. But they're only surprised because they don't go and talk to people outside of their own social group. So what do you fucking expect? And Harrington is a classic example of doing things in the interest of the people she sits with. At least the Jockey Club, for all their many, many faults, the old Jockey Club I'm referring to, at least these people were so fucking stratospherically rich. They weren't interested in careers. They weren't even interested in picking up their paycheck. They operated from the sense of the old aristocracy of doing what's best for the sport, right or wrong. And the individuals were horrible, a lot of them, and, you know, and superior, but at least they had a long-term investment in the development of the sport and the longevity of the sport. These cunts couldn't care less. If racing was banned tomorrow, they won't give a fuck. They'd get another job. All the people will be made redundant. They'd find jobs in other public sector organisations. You know, no interest. They would not lose a moment's sleep. And in fact, worse than that, sorry, I'm ranting here. Worse than that, they'd convince themselves that they achieved a measure of success. And you can see their CVs. You know, I piloted racing, you know, a huge organisation to a period of unprecedented change, and I delivered these outcomes set by government. Well done. Have another job in the private sector doing some other bollocks.
Sir, to finish the show, BHA, you know where we're at, and you know what to do. You know what you should do. You don't want to listen to us. Why? Because you think you're right. You're wrong. You're miles wrong. And you're going to fuck the industry up. I promise you. You can come back to this podcast. What is it? Sunday the 24th of September. Come back to this podcast and tell me in 3 years, if you carry on your same direction of being total arseholes, right, in terms of this, and not challenging the Gambling Commission and not defending racing and punters, thousands which have lost accounts. If you don't come back to this day, if you come back to this day in 2 years' time and say, look, Lee of Bar Stewards, you're a fucking idiot, I'll accept that, but start doing it. Start doing the work that needs doing to repair this. You can make some impact. Well, you've got Greg Swift, haven't you? You know, what is it? Contacts in number 10. Come on, Greg, what are you doing? Get to your contacts in Westminster. Start.
I think you're right, and I think from a human element, the fact that, as John said many months ago, that punters have been overlooked. You know, even the fact that punters fund the sport, they know that, right? They absolutely understand it. They're not stupid. They know, but they have absolute contempt for punters, and this comes from an intellectual and moral sense of superiority. You know, punters are scum of the earth. They're an unnecessary. You know, if we could only fund racing using some other method, you know, sell more ice creams or bouncy castles or fucking pop concerts, etc. And the fact is that they won't address it because they view themselves as morally and intellectually superior to people who choose to risk their money on the outcome of a horse race. And Rob Davis said it very eloquently. He's admitted he cannot understand why people bet. And you know, if you amplify that by a factor of 10, you know, these people just don't get why anyone would want to have a bet or have a drink or go on holiday or have a smoke, because that's not what they do. So therefore, you know, why should you do it? That's it.
Greg Swift, come on the show. I'm inviting you. Me and you. Let's have a chat. whatever you want to do it off air if you want. And I'll admit, like many that you've met before, that you've never met them. That's all it is. We're saying it as bar stewards. We hope you've enjoyed the show. It's a rantastic show. That's all from me, John and Chris. Bye for now.